Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Museum on Tap Happy Hour. I'm your host, Jessica Urban, and I'm here today with one of my favorite people, my colleague, Dr. Brenda Hunda, Cincinnati Museum Center's curator of invertebrate paleontology. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Jessica.
I'm so happy that you're here. I miss seeing you every day.
I know, I miss you too, and I'm so glad to be here. How often do I get to be at work and have a drink at the same time?
I know. Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to Happy Hour.
Happy hour.
So I have always thought that one of the coolest things about being a research scientist must be getting out into the field. Is that something that you get to do often?
Not often enough. In my much younger years when I didn't have young children and saddled with all of that, I did do a lot more international travel. I try to get out in the field locally here in the Cincinnati area as often as I can, but most of my international travel was back before children. Yeah, they're a complicating factor, but a good one.
How many countries have you been in working as a paleontologist?
Gosh, working, I haven't counted, not as many as a lot of my colleagues, probably at least 10.
Wow. Do you have a favorite place that you've been?
Oh my goodness, they're all so different. Today I'm going to talk about Vietnam because I have so many fond memories of that place. It's a beautiful country. That's what we'll focus on. But I've been to Morocco and Argentina, all over Europe, of course, United States and Canada, Spain. It's been wonderful.
That's great. Well, I can't wait to hear about Vietnam. So I'm going to settle in, everybody at home settle in, and let's hear it.
Sure. So I went to Vietnam with some colleagues from the United States and also from Vietnam in 2010. And I remember my father was in the Canadian military. He was a radar tech, so he never saw action during Vietnam or anything like that. But I remember telling him, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to Vietnam for 3 weeks in the field." And his first response to me was, "What the hell are you going there for?" I think I think there was a lot of leftover resentment, even though it was Canada. From those times in the late 60s, early 70s. Of course, it's a much different country now. And we had an amazing experience there. So our goal in Vietnam was really to sort of see what we could find. So oftentimes when we go in the field, we have a very specific goal, a very specific target of what we want to hit. And in this case, little was really known about the geology of Vietnam. It had been closed off to Western science for a really long time. And most of the geology that was conducted in Vietnam was done through, Vietnamese geologists who worked for the government and didn't have a lot of outside influence. And because of that as well, they didn't have a lot of collaboration and didn't have access to a lot of the latest scientific techniques to address questions. And so it literally was, let's go on a map, find a piece of rock and figure out what it is and how old it is, and if it can help us tell the story that we want to tell. So it was really kind of like a Indiana Jones adventure, sort of the more classic, let's just go and see what happens kind of field experience, which is always fun. That's really the most exciting, because that's when you have like the most discovery, right? And so the goal really was to look at some outcrop sections to see if we could tell what age they were. We didn't even know if they were the right type of rock and how old they were. We had some general idea from geologic maps, but they were very rudimentary. And we wanted to see if any of those rocks could help us piece together the plate tectonic story of Southeast Asia. My colleagues were very interested in understanding how the Himalayas came to form and how all of Southeast Asia came to form as plates moved together and tectonics made the continents as we know them today. And interestingly, one of the best ways back in the Cambrian about 500 million years ago to tell that is by the trilobites.
Which is what I call the trilobites.
Yes, I always have to have trilobites in there. So during the Cambrian time period, for the trilobites, these ancient arthropods that are kind of similar to horseshoe crabs and scorpions, but we don't have anything like them around today, really were the sort of the king on the hill as far as organisms were in the oceans. They were the most populous, they were the most diverse, and they really helped geologists pinpoint where they are in time and place, depending on what type of trilobite you see. It's what we call an index fossil. And depending on how the trilobites are distributed across land masses, you can tell if two land masses were close to each other in the past because they share a trilobite fauna. And so, for instance, some places in the world have trilobite faunas that are similar, like Europe and North America have similar trilobite faunas because we were once united, even though we are now an ocean apart. So this is biogeography or paleobiogeography, and that's what we use to reconstruct these tectonics. So our goal is to see if we could find, number one, sedimentary rocks that fossils would be preserved in, sedimentary rocks that weren't completely messed up from mountain building, because Vietnam is nothing but a series of mountain ranges, and if we could find any fossils in there that might tell us a little bit about the age strata and if they could help us piece together the story. So it's a long trip all the way across, 13-hour flight, pit stop in Japan and Thailand, and finally getting to Vietnam. And Vietnam, if you've never been, I would really recommend it as a vacation spot. It's a stunning country. It's basically all mountain range on the west side and all coast on the east side. I mean, it's narrow enough that you're basically getting both vistas as you drive along the entire length of the country.
Wow.
And so we ended up making a base in Hanoi, which was in northern Vietnam, and traveling 3 days in basically a minivan to the very, very tip of Vietnam, right where you could kind of see like China on the other side of the hill. So we were as close up as we could possibly go. And so these are very remote places. A lot of these people that live in these villages, this is the thing about traveling and fieldwork that's fantastic, is that we go to places that, aren't bustling cities because we want to see the rock, right? So a lot of these towns have just got electricity in the last few years, have never seen a TV show, let alone an American television show, generally don't have Westerners come into their villages very often. And so it was really kind of funny because I learned very quickly that I was an oddity, like a serious, you think I'm an oddity, you would be a major oddity because of how tall you are, because you're so tall.
Oh.
Vietnamese people are tiny people. Like even the men are like, I'm 5'7", so, I'm sort of slightly above average. And, Vietnamese men, if they got to 5'5", was kind of tall, and the women were just like children sized. And so everywhere I went, I would get these really, really strange looks from these villagers trying to kind of like figure me out. Plus I'm, for lack of a better word, really pale comparison. And they really do prize light colored skin over there. And so I would have women come up to me, can't speak the language, and like lift up my shirt and point to my belly and say beautiful, like in public, like at the bank, places like this. So it was a very interesting culture shock. I'd also have like families come up. They were always interested when we were digging in the field what we were doing. And the villagers would just kind of like hang out with you for like 3 hours. And they don't have an idea of personal space there the same way that we do. So they would be like bumping up against you and like looking over your shoulder, and their head would be right here, and you'd be trying to like dig at the rock and their head would be right here. And you wouldn't really know like how to politely say, okay, let's back off a little bit, I need some space. But what's interesting was the little kids. The toddlers, kind of like between 2, 3, and 4, were terrified of me.
Oh, no.
Absolutely terrified. They would run away from me screaming, yelling, white ghost, white ghost, white ghost. I had to ask our translators what they were saying. I think because they hadn't seen someone so pale as I am. I'm French Canadian, so I'm pretty pale, I guess.
So I'm picturing you in the jungle camping with tents and hauling all your equipment. Is that how it was? Just really like remote? And
no, we were pretty lucky. We were able to stay in hotels. Uh-oh.
You're back.
I'm here.
Intermission, everybody. I hope you use that time to get yourself another drink. We're back. while you guys are digging around on that rock, were you finding trilobites?
You know, we're in Cincinnati here, and if you've been in this area for any length of time, you know that you can pick up a rock and there's trilobite pieces in it. I mean, it's a very common thing here. It took us 3 days to find our first trilobite.
No kidding.
Which is a little bit different than what I'm used to around here in Cincinnati, where I can go out basically in my rock wall just around the corner here and find trilobites no problem. So it was a little bit of a different kind of situation for sure.
Did they tell you what you were hoping to find out?
Can you say that again for me, Jessica?
Yeah, sure. Did the trilobite that you found end up telling you what you wanted to find out? What did you learn?
Actually, yes, it was the first trilobite that we had ever found in that one section. And we figured out, I'm not a Cambrian expert, don't get me wrong, I'm an Ordovician person. We can look that up later, but we did discover that it was a Cambrian section and a very important piece of the puzzle. That was a very, very exciting find, so.
Yeah. Is that always just like a really good feeling when you're out in the field and you're looking for something and, you know, like you said, you spent days and days. Is that just the best feeling when you finally find it?
Yeah, because it's a piece of a missing puzzle. And really that's what paleontology, in this case plate tectonics, almost literally, is a puzzle. And so finding that little missing piece that helps you to put the other pieces together is really exciting and very rewarding, even if it does take you thousands of miles and weeks to get there. And then 3 days in the field with the ox right behind you in the village, stepping over all kinds of poops of different kinds of livestock animals, and it's quite an adventure. And I don't really consider a field season complete without two fundamental things that have to happen. One, you have to have vehicle trouble. So it could be a variety of things. There has to be a mechanical breakdown somewhere. In our case, we had two. We had a flat tire, which fortuitously got flat right across from a tire shop in the middle of nowhere.
That's
Vietnam. Yeah, so that was kind of funny. And the second thing is you have to get your vehicle stuck somewhere, which we also did. Trying to cross a river, definitely had our vehicle stuck in the sand. And it was just like, you'll see a picture of it, this really, really weird little minivan. So it wasn't like an off-roading vehicle by any means. And then the second thing you need is to be bitten by some kind of blood-sucking organism. That's generally like another really good hallmark.
Well, I mean, that doesn't sound great, but it definitely sounds adventurous.
Oh yeah. So we were looking for this granite outcrop. When I say outcrop, I kind of mean like boulder, like this rock. And it was, the reason we wanted this piece of granite was because there wasn't a lot of granite exposed. Vietnam is not exactly a rocky kind of country. It's very mountainous, but it's all covered with tropical forest vegetation. I mean, it's not a place where you go to see rocks, right? It's rainforest, beautiful, but not a lot of exposures. And so we were looking for this one rock that was granite. And the reason why we wanted to do granite was because we can date that with isotopic techniques that can tell us how old those rocks are. So it was really important to get this piece. But what it meant was that we had to hike half a day through this stream, bushwhacking all of this vegetation, following a geologic map to try to figure out how to get this. This rock was supposed to be at the end of this, like at the mouth of the stream. Okay, so me and my colleague are walking through the stream, and at points we're wading up to our hips in water. It's raining, so we're soaking wet from the bottom up and the top down. Okay, but we're determined to go ahead and get to this granite outcrop, and we're like, you know, crawling on our hands and knees and getting muddy. It's a great adventure. Never found it, never got to it. Decided that we had to turn back to get back to the vehicle in time to meet with the rest of our team. And when we got back, we, got into the van, and I was taking my boots off sort of outside the van, and I saw something kind of out of the corner of my eye on the seat, wiggling. And I was like, oh no. So I was like, okay, guys, we got leeches.
Oh.
So everybody got out of the van ran and dropped their pants to the ground. Just took all it off. Well, we kept our breeches on, but heads off, and we weren't covered, but we all had a few. One of my colleagues had 5 leeches on them.
Ooh.
Oh, not my favorite animal. They have value, but not my favorite. Anyhow, we ended up just like having to pluck them off each other, and it was quite fun, bleeding for the rest of the day because they were like huge, like tropical leeches. It was gross.
That is gross.
That's a fond memory. I love it.
Making your work sound super glamorous. Right.
That's the thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Everyone has sort of this Indiana Jones. He's an archaeologist, not a paleontologist, but they have this sort of field. It feels a little bit glamorous what we do out there. And yes, you'll encounter snakes and bugs and leeches and spiders. No Nazis, thankfully. That's good. You do uncover those dangers. And but in all my experiences, it's never been anything, super bad. It's just been part of the story, and it's been part of the experience. And you do have to be prepared to get wet and dirty and sweaty and gross. And sometimes, in the case of Vietnam, a little drunk. I can explain that one. And and it's just really a good time. At the end of the day, you have a shower if you're lucky. You have running water if you're lucky. You have indoor plumbing if you're really, really lucky. And then you can, relax and enjoy the rest of your evening. So it's a good time.
Is it all worth it though when you get to find what you're looking for?
Oh, absolutely. And I think anybody who does field work, whether you're a biologist or a geologist, or me specifically a paleontologist or an archaeologist, sort of knows it's par for the course, and that's what we go into it for. I mean, that's our first love. So my first love has always been outside in nature. I don't care about bugs and spiders and snakes. Those things don't freak me out. I don't mind getting dirty or wet or sweaty or gross. I just love being one of the first people to see a fossil that's 500 million years old coming out of the ground. And then to be able to figure out like what that fossil is going to tell me, what's the story that it wants to tell me, and piecing that together. It's the closest thing to time travel you'll ever get to. And I love that.
That's really cool. I'm so glad that you joined us for happy hour tonight. I've known you for years, and I love getting to hear your travel stories. So I'm glad that we could share them. I hope everyone at home enjoyed them as well. And I can't wait to see you when we get back to the museum.
Me too. And there's more other places next time. So, but I really enjoyed our time together. Thanks for having me.
We'll do another one.
Okay, sounds good.
Cheers, Brenda.
Cheers. Take care, okay?
You too.